The airport fell silent in a way no one could explain. Just moments earlier, people had watched a tired black single father quietly surrender his first-class VIP seat to a wealthy businessman who insisted that money could buy anything. The father lowered his eyes, gathered his little daughter's backpack, and walked away without arguing. But exactly 5 minutes later, armed security officers rushed into the boarding gate, the aircraft doors slammed shut, and a chilling announcement echoed across the terminal ordering every passenger off the plane. Suddenly, every pair of eyes turned back toward the man they had ignored, and what happened next changed every heart in that airport forever. Before we continue, if you believe kindness is never weakness and that second chances can change lives, take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who believes in compassion, and subscribe to Kindness Corner for more unforgettable stories that remind us why humanity still matters. Marcus Johnson had never imagined his life would become a constant balancing act between heartbreak and hope. 3 years earlier, he had buried his wife after an unexpected illness stole her from him, leaving him alone to raise their 6-year-old daughter, Ava. Since then, every sunrise had been another promise that he would somehow give his little girl a future filled with love, even if it meant sacrificing every comfort he once enjoyed. He worked long shifts as a cybersecurity consultant, often accepting overnight contracts while still making it to Ava's school performances with barely enough time to change clothes. His eyes carried permanent exhaustion, but they also held a quiet determination that refused to disappear. The invitation to attend an international cybersecurity conference had felt like the first reward life had offered in years. Marcus had been selected to present groundbreaking research that could earn him a leadership position at one of the country's most respected technology firms. The organizers had provided him with a VIP first-class ticket because he was the keynote presenter, and they had even arranged for Ava to travel with him since he couldn't leave her behind. It wasn't about luxury. It was about arriving rested enough to deliver the presentation that could transform their future forever. On the morning of their flight, Ava held tightly onto the stuffed rabbit her mother had given her before she passed away. Marcus smiled every time she looked out the airport windows in amazement, pointing excitedly at airplanes lifting into the bright blue sky. She believed this trip was an adventure, unaware that her father had spent months worrying about bills, childcare, and whether this opportunity might finally lift them into a better life. As boarding began, Marcus presented his boarding passes with humble gratitude. Everything seemed perfect until a sharply dressed businessman approached the airline desk, visibly frustrated after discovering that his own upgrade request had been denied. He wore an expensive watch, carried confidence like a badge of honor, and spoke loudly enough for everyone nearby to hear. Within moments, whispers spread through the boarding area as airline employees appeared increasingly uncomfortable. The businessman insisted that someone should give up a VIP seat because he had an important meeting waiting overseas. He repeatedly mentioned his wealth, his status, and the amount of money he spent flying every year. Although the staff initially resisted, pressure mounted, and eventually one employee walked toward Marcus with an apologetic expression. They explained there had been an unexpected seating conflict and asked whether he would voluntarily accept an economy seat instead. Marcus looked down at Ava, who had already begun coloring in her notebook, completely unaware of what was happening. He knew the conference mattered, but he also saw the stress on the employee's face. Instead of creating a scene, he quietly nodded. He gathered their belongings, thanked the staff politely, and walked toward the back of the boarding line. Many passengers watched without saying a word. Some avoided eye contact. Others assumed he simply didn't matter enough to keep what had been rightfully his. The wealthy passenger settled comfortably into the luxurious seat Marcus had surrendered. He looked satisfied, convinced that influence had once again delivered exactly what he wanted. Meanwhile, Marcus squeezed into economy beside Ava, reassuring her that every seat on an airplane reached the same destination. She smiled innocently and rested her head against his shoulder, trusting her father completely. Exactly 5 minutes later, everything changed. The cabin lights flickered. Boarding suddenly stopped. Flight attendants exchanged nervous glances before speaking urgently into their communication devices. Seconds later, security officers entered through the aircraft door with remarkable speed. Their expressions were serious enough to silence every conversation instantly. Then came the announcement no traveler ever expects to hear. Due to an urgent security matter, every passenger was instructed to leave the aircraft immediately. Confusion spread like wildfire. People grabbed their luggage while speculating about mechanical failures, security threats, or hidden dangers. The businessman who had insisted on the VIP seat looked irritated more than concerned, complaining about delays as he reluctantly joined the line exiting the plane. When everyone returned to the terminal, another surprise awaited them. Airport officials were not searching luggage. They were searching for Marcus Johnson. Several employees quickly approached him with visible relief. One senior executive from the conference organizing committee had arrived at the airport personally after learning what had happened. Marcus's presentation contained highly classified cybersecurity findings connected to a major international infrastructure project. During a routine verification, organizers realized their keynote presenter had unexpectedly disappeared from the assigned VIP manifest. Concerned that the wrong individual had occupied the reserved seat under Marcus's credentials, they immediately requested the aircraft be evacuated before departure. Within minutes, the misunderstanding became clear. The VIP seat had never been an ordinary upgrade. It had been linked to enhanced security protocols because Marcus was traveling with confidential government-approved research scheduled for presentation abroad. By moving another passenger into that seat without proper authorization, the boarding records triggered multiple security alerts across airport systems. The wealthy passenger's confidence vanished almost instantly. He stood speechless as officials calmly explained the error. Nobody accused him of a crime, but everyone now understood that the quiet father he had dismissed was not an ordinary traveler. More importantly, they realized Marcus had never once mentioned his importance or demanded special treatment. He had simply chosen kindness over conflict. Passengers who had watched silently earlier now looked at Marcus differently. Some lowered their heads in embarrassment. Others quietly apologized for not speaking up when they saw the unfairness unfold. One elderly woman gently hugged Ava, telling her she should always be proud of her father because true strength was measured by character, not by loud voices or expensive clothes. The airline's senior management arrived shortly afterward to apologize sincerely. They admitted they had failed to protect a passenger who had every right to remain in his assigned seat. As a gesture of accountability, they upgraded Marcus and Ava to an even more comfortable private suite aboard the next available flight, ensured his conference schedule remained unaffected, and pledged additional staff training so that status would never outweigh fairness again. Marcus accepted the apology with remarkable grace. He understood that people make mistakes, but he also believed forgiveness creates opportunities that anger never can. Before boarding the replacement flight, he looked around the crowded terminal filled with strangers whose perspectives had shifted forever. Many smiled warmly at him. Others quietly applauded. Not because he held an important professional title, but because he had shown dignity when the world had offered him disrespect. As the new aircraft climbed above the clouds, Ava leaned against her father and asked why everyone had suddenly become so nice. Marcus simply kissed the top of her head and smiled. Some lessons, he knew, were better shown than explained. She had witnessed that kindness does not always receive immediate rewards, but eventually truth has a way of revealing itself. Wealth can impress people for a moment, but humility and integrity leave memories that last a lifetime. Months later, Marcus's presentation became one of the conference's greatest successes. His research earned international recognition, and he accepted a leadership position that gave him both financial security and precious time with Ava. More importantly, the story of the father who quietly surrendered his seat and still chose compassion spread far beyond the airport, inspiring thousands to reconsider how quickly they judge someone by appearance alone. Before we finish, please leave a comment telling us where you're watching from and share one act of kindness you've experienced or witnessed that restored your faith in humanity. If this story touched your heart, reminded you that kindness is never a sign of weakness, and inspired you to believe that character always outweighs status, Please like this video, share it with your friends and family, leave your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to Kindness Corner. Your support helps us continue sharing stories that remind the world that even in moments of injustice, compassion has the power to change lives forever.